You know, it's funny what you just said, though, which is you bought it and then you sold it after you made some money. And so many people will do the same thing with Bitcoin.
Exactly.
In fact, they have said it, but you'll see in a generation of institutional investors, they'll buy Bitcoin because it's going up, and then they'll sell it after they've made triple profit to take some money off the table.
The point I'm trying to make is that Bitcoin is the same thing, and people don't understand it. They don't understand that it is the base layer of money, and it is going to absorb the entire monetary system given a long enough time frame, at least in my opinion.
Hi there, lovers of cryptocurrency. Join the aftermath of the historic Bitcoin Atlantis conference, when notable figures in the field lit up the stage with powerful keynote speeches. Michael Saylor, the executive chairman of MicroStrategy, stole the show and captivated us with his compelling story. Over the course of 3 thrilling days, the conference included lively panel discussions, with one particularly captivating session facilitated by the skilled. The panel featured the brilliant minds of Michael Saylor, renowned investment strategist Lynn Alden, and sound money advocate Lawrence Leopard. Saylor, in a moment that shook the cryptocurrency world, confidently and unwaveringly outlined a bright future for Bitcoin. He claims that the most popular cryptocurrency has entered its gold rush decade, which will run from 2024 to 2034. Saylor foresees a wild rush for Bitcoin as buyers scramble to get a piece before the impending shortage occurs. The forward-thinking CEO identified 2034 as a turning moment for Bitcoin, by which time 99% of its supply will have been mined. There is a sense of urgency among possible investors, since the remaining 1% is scheduled for full mining by 2140. Saylor's observations shed light on the route ahead and encouraged everyone to move quickly before the chance passes them by. Saylor and Leopard explored how investors will see Bitcoin in the upcoming years during their conversation. Saylor compared Bitcoin to modern tech giants like Apple and Microsoft and saw it establish a respected place in the market. Leopard, a seasoned advocate of sound money, announced his whole devotion to Bitcoin in the meantime, seeing it as a better investment than gold. Come along on this fascinating adventure with us as we examine the profound ideas that were presented at the Bitcoin Atlantis conference and investigate the fascinating future that the cryptocurrency world holds. Press the subscribe button, and together, let's take on the revolution.
First of all, let me just say, somebody pinched me. I mean, it's like I'm a club payer for Bedford, and they say, let's go scrimmage with Messi and Ronaldo. I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm just an old fart gold guy. And I view my role in this whole thing as converting gold guys into Bitcoin, because they get half the problem. They understand the monetary debasement issue. They just got the wrong tool, as Michael says. And thank God Bitcoin came along and gave us a much stronger and better weapon, which I've increasingly embraced. And of course, now I'm a full-fledged maxi and out of gold, or getting out of gold. But I've seen in my base probably 50-50 conversion. Some people are just too dyed-in-the-wool, can't get over the physicality issue, don't understand the future, don't want to take the time, don't want to do the work. But I've seen others who've completely flipped. A notable one recently was Chris Irons of Quote the Raven, who was a very smart guy and understood the debasement issue, but was anti-Bitcoin because he hadn't done the work. And I just kept working on him and working on him and working on him to do the work, and now he's a raving maximalist. It's really fabulous. So it goes both ways. Some guys get converted and some don't. And but we just got to keep chipping away. I think Michael's point from his brilliant speech earlier of it's incumbent upon all of us to spread the word, because this is the solution to all our problems. In the early 80s, I started my business career. The IBM PC was introduced in 1980, and Microsoft came public in 1986. Came public at 14 times trailing, and it's growing 40% a year. And at the time, if you were in the computer business, you were at IBM or Prime or DEC or Wang, and the mini computer was really the thing, and a lot of people regarded these PCs as toys. And I think it's an interesting analogy that back at that point in time, software was regarded as risky, because it was ones and zeros, and people didn't see that there could be any value in it. They were saying, how can there be value in the software? It's just written, it's code, it has no value. The value's in the disk drives, the value's at IBM, the value's in these hardware computers, people who are making real stuff. Sounds kind of familiar, right? And I recall, go a little further back, wind it back, I'm at business school, and I'm with my business school roommate. He's with his roommate from Harvard College, a guy named Steve Ballmer. We're walking along the Charles River, and Ballmer says, we've got this thing called DOS, and the entire world is going to need this thing. The entire world. Everybody is going to have it. It's going to be a part of everybody's life. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I looked at him, I thought he was nuts. But then it kind of hit me, he wasn't nuts. It was the base layer of the technology that allowed the PC to grow. And 40 years later, it is ubiquitous, and Ballmer's obviously a billionaire, and Microsoft's a multi-billion-dollar company. I mean, I bought it at the time in 86 when it came public. Sold it 3 years later to buy a condo. It was a mistake. The split adjusted price is 6 cents. and the stock trades at, $290 today. So it was, 47,000 times your money or 4,700 times your money. The point I'm trying to make is that Bitcoin is the same thing, and people don't understand it. They don't understand that it is the base layer of money, and it is going to absorb the entire monetary system, given a long enough time frame, at least in my opinion.
Microsoft comes public 86?
Yes.
How many years after Microsoft came public did it take before investors thought investing in Microsoft was a conventional
It's a good
investment?
question. I would say my memory was it really started to get going in the mid-'90s, maybe in late '90s, and probably
10 years?
At least 10 years, yeah.
10 years.
At least 10. And it just kind of got progressively better, as you know. We could go look at the Stark chart and see the curve, right?
Well, for 10 years it was risky. And
Oh, absolutely.
you know what's
Absolutely.
funny, what you just said though, which is you bought it and then you sold it after you made
Yeah.
some money, and so many people will do the same thing with Bitcoin.
Exactly.
In fact, they have said it, but you'll see in a generation of institutional investors, they'll buy Bitcoin because it's going up, and then they'll sell it after they've made triple profit to take some money off the table. And then 10 years,
Right.
in 2035,
Right.
they'll look and they'll understand it much better, and then
Right.
they'll think, like the way people think about Microsoft and Apple today, which is you just never sell them, you just own them forever.
Right.
And by 2035, they'll probably say, now I think I'll just own it. And Kramer, if he's still working
From
CNBC,
Seinfeld, right?
if he's still working on CNBC, he'll be saying, yeah, Bitcoin, you just own it, you don't trade it.
During their talk, Saylor and Alden discussed how Bitcoin will go with its next stage of growth and how it will eventually become the core of our financial system. MicroStrategy's executive chairman presented a convincing vision, stating that an upward trend will occur when fiat currencies eventually lose their power. Tens of millions of people will be drawn in by this ripple, and finally, billions of investors will seek comfort in Bitcoin. Saylor used information from Chainalysis as of November 2023 to demonstrate this tendency using the example of Nigeria. Nigeria was rated 18th in peer-to-peer transactions a few years ago, but things changed quickly when the government denied cryptocurrency investors access to banks. The debate highlighted that governments throughout the world may take similar actions to counter perceived dangers posed by cryptocurrencies, even in the face of such legislative obstacles. Nonetheless, investors' tenacity guarantees that they will always find methods to purchase and exchange bitcoins. Let's hear what Saylor and Lynn Alden has to say.
I think there's 1,000 different on-ramps. I mean, it's not one. Lightning is an important layer too, but there's a different Bitcoin wallet in every, there's a dozen Bitcoin wallets in every country. There's a dozen Bitcoin exchanges. There's peer-to-peer. It's a different story in every country in Africa, a different story in every country in Asia. It's going to be an evolving story, and you're going to see people develop a lot of competitive layer twos. You're going to see people develop competitive layer 3 apps, competitive exchanges. Some people will be good, some companies will move fast, some will move slow. There'll be regulatory turmoil. There'll be I could have predicted, like in Argentina, I would have said, at some point, Argentina will close the door to Bitcoin before Javier was elected. I would have thought that they're going to institute capital controls. And then that election turned everything 180 degrees. And it went the opposite way. So politics is chaos. And then you saw the opposite thing happening in Nigeria, where it was 400 naira to the dollar, and when it jumps to 1,200 naira to the dollar, they're closing the on-ramps. They're closing the on-ramps to the custodians, but non-custodial solutions become all the more compelling then, right? So I don't think there's one answer. There's not even one best outcome or need in one country, because it's dynamically evolving based upon the politics and the circumstances in every single nation on the ground. It even changes by state, by province, right? So I just think this is classic market situation. The one thing that'll happen is all these currencies, as they weaken, there'll be marketing events for Bitcoin. Everyone in a collapsing currency is going to look for a solution. More and more are going to hear about Bitcoin, then they're going to want to be paid in Bitcoin, then they're going to want to download a Lightning wallet, then there'll be another wallet, then there'll be a debate about what to do with it.
One thing I described in my book, actually, there's 160 different currencies in the world. And if you look historically, how does money get in and out, right? Because they all have varying levels of capital controls, more or less, around them. And the two ways the money gets in or out are either through physical ports of entry, which are obviously very restricted. You can only bring so much cash or gold through an airport. And then wire transfers, which again are tightly controlled environments. And so when you have like a space with a failing currency and millions of people, historically, the ways to get out were somewhat limited in terms of scale. And what things like Bitcoin and stablecoins do is, one, you can bring them through ports of entry with infinite value density, right? So it gets past that issue. And then two, if I hire a graphic designer in country XYZ, she can hold up a QR code over a video call, or she can send a payment string over email or DM, and I can pay her over that and go around her local banking system. And so there's obviously frictions there for those that are trying to maintain those kind of captive audiences in 100+ different currencies around the world. But what we've generally seen is countries try to kind of block the exits and realize it's not working. Like you mentioned Argentina, there was in 2022, they stopped, a lot of banks were going to get into Bitcoin, and the Argentinian government stopped them from doing it, the big banks. Then they actually, the next year, they extended it to the fintech companies, not even the banks, but the next layer. And they never got to the point where they said Bitcoin's illegal, but they were trying to make it harder and harder to do. Now some of that's being reversed. We also saw in Nigeria, they went through a phase where they blocked all the banks from sending to exchanges. Nigeria then developed the largest peer-to-peer market volumes in the world, according to most measurements, if you look at chain analysis. So basically, whenever there's a friction, if the people want it, the tool's so powerful that they can route around blockages until the problem at the top is forced to change and modify their strategy. And so I think we're going to see more and more waves of that. We're going to see frictions, and then we're going to see overcoming frictions, and then we're going to see new frictions and overcoming frictions, because the market's just, the tool itself is so powerful that it just gives so many ways to route around problems when they emerge.
Michael Saylor explains the complex processes of Bitcoin's rise to popularity in the global financial system in his enlightening talk. He emphasizes how there are several on-ramps, or places of entry, into the Bitcoin ecosystem. Saylor highlights the diverse network of Bitcoin wallets, exchanges, and peer-to-peer transactions that have all contributed to the cryptocurrency's widespread acceptance, while also recognizing the significance of Layer 2 solutions like Lightning. Saylor also draws attention to the varied ways that Bitcoin is being adopted internationally, pointing out that every country has its own distinct story that is influenced by political, economic, and legal variables. He highlights examples from the real world, like as Argentina, where a change in political leadership drastically changed the course of Bitcoin adoption. Saylor highlights how unpredictable political environments may be, and how important it is to take into account how each country's conditions are always changing. The seasoned CEO offers perceptive insights into Nigeria, highlighting the ways in which regulatory actions affected the nation's peer-to-peer sector. Saylor anticipates an upward trend as fiat currencies deteriorate, despite obstacles to Bitcoin's durability. He envisions a situation in which people in collapsing economies look more and more to Bitcoin as a remedy, setting off a chain reaction of increased knowledge, adoption, and incorporation of Bitcoin into routine financial operations. In addition, Lynn Alden explores the historical nuances of cross-border money transfers in her detailed analysis of the financial scene. Alden emphasizes the disruptive power of Bitcoin and stablecoins while highlighting the restrictions imposed by physical ports and money transactions. Because of their limitless value density, these digital assets become extremely potent instruments that may overcome the limitations imposed by conventional methods of value transmission. Alden provides a clear picture of how governments try to regulate the flow of money by placing limits on banks and other financial organizations, using specific instances from Argentina and Nigeria. She does, however, astutely note the robustness of decentralized technologies such as Bitcoin, which enable people to get over these obstacles by means of digital communication channels and peer-to-peer transactions. Alden predicts a cyclical pattern in the uptake of Bitcoin that is marked by challenges being overcome and frictions. She asserts that the intrinsic strength and adaptability of Bitcoin technology will be the driving forces behind this cycle. People will keep coming up with creative methods to use Bitcoin's powers, while governments try to keep things under control, which will cause the global financial scene to constantly change. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this. Until next time, happy investing.